Alright, so as you've probably guessed, this is a reply to the Helluva Season 2 Episode 1 was a mistake video by Hezu Neutral. I'm just going to be going through the video, watching with you guys as I reply to these statements. And normally I wouldn't do something like this, probably just leave like a fucking 10 paragraph long comment detailing each moment, but I'm like, it's so much, and so much of it is wrong. And I feel like this person is probably just either too young or inexperienced to have the perspective that clearly the writers are using when detailing these characters. So yeah, let's just go through it. We'll start with the beginning of the video here.
The most recent episode.
Let's just watch this part.
Hello everyone, Hezu here. I don't usually talk about individual episodes. I'm someone that likes to critique things when they are finished to get the overall picture. But the most recent episode of Helluva was, well, after I ranted to friends about it for over 3 hours, I realized I needed to talk about this episode. Spoiler!
This really upset you, huh?
Spoilers for Helluva Boss. If you don't want to be spoiled, this video is not for you. Okay, so I'm not going to summarize the series too much, but Helluva Boss Season 2 Episode 1 is a mess. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed many parts of it, but this entire episode was an unnecessary retcon. So Helluva...
Your first mistake. There's no retcon involved here. In fact, if you go into your comment section, there's probably like 7 or 20 people detailing logistically how. But anyway, like, yeah, we'll get to that.
The boss has two characters in a business partners with benefits relationship.
Is our first understanding, and that's part of why this writing is actually so clever and intricate, and part of the reason I've actually started considering this show as like a legitimate art piece rather than just a let's get all the Tumblrites, you know, to a fucking show about hell. You know, it'll make them feel edgy and fun, and we can put gay shit in it. And it's like, yeah, okay. Like, that was an okay idea, and it made a fun, humoristic show, but as we've gone further, we've realized that not only were they touching on some more intricate and delicate storytelling, but they were setting up and, what's the word? Foreshadowing, this part of the story here, which is very well done. Let's just continue.
They just retconned it all by implementing the estranged childhood friend trope and love at first sight trope.
Again, no retconning. And those tropes exist because they're real things that happen, funny enough. That's kind of why a lot of tropes exist, is it's meant to reflect reality. Life imitates art, and art imitates life. So yeah, you can call it a trope. It's true, it does happen a lot. But tropes are only bad when they're used improperly, or when they're used for the sake of the trope, which neither is going on here.
Why did they do this? Stolas is given his grimoire by his father, and then engaged to his future wife Stella, who is depicted as being a narcissistic insaniac from day one.
Yes.
Stolas begins to cry, and his father takes him to the circus. Stolas meets Blitzo and basically falls head over heels for him right then and there.
Weird way to put it. Definitely develops an infatuation with somebody that they see has admirable qualities to them. You gotta remember, and I feel like you forget this a lot when you're making your video, is Stolas, from what we can tell, and from all of the surrounding, you know, evidence and, you know, just depictions, the intentional artistic depictions from the writers, is a very sheltered, like, on the immense levels. You gotta remember, he's also in hell, so that can be taken even further. You know, there's not, you know, he doesn't have to go outside. They could just keep him inside all the time, and nobody would bat an eye. He's also part of an entire aristocracy, so it gets even worse. But yeah, so he's incredibly sheltered, and probably has 0 social skills as a result. He sees... and, you know, probably doesn't have a lot of fun. He spends 90% of his time, from what we can tell, you know, just studying, becoming better at his job that he's eventually going to fulfill. That's probably where a lot of his fun comes from. Apparently he was rarely taken to the circus. Hell, this could be the only time except for... No, I'm pretty sure from what we can, like, see in the show, this is the only time. And that's kind of fucked up. You know, his dad was on FaceTime while he went. But, because he just didn't have the time or desire to actually go himself. Anyway, so he sees Blitzo here, another child of his age, possibly physically attractive to him. That it seems that way, which initiates a lot of things for kids of a age where they can find other kids attractive. Additionally, doing something zany and fun, and is in the following role in this scenario. So he's not the center of attention, but he is nonetheless a circus clown. He's everything opposite what has been, I guess, kind of depressing, possibly, Stolas this entire time. He is someone who's out there and having fun, and he's seeing this, and he's like, wow, that's attractive. I'm attracted to this. I want more of this. I want to live a life like this. He's living a great life, and he exudes himself in such a way that is desirable. That's fine. That's not necessarily falling head over heels, but, to loop back, he's just attracted to him, potentially, with the blushing here.
Stolas' father takes notice and buys Blitzo from Blitzo's father for a day.
Just to quickly really go over this. No, there wasn't a time limit established. Why didn't he continue and stay? Because that'd be incredibly stupid. Why would you hang around a place you've already stolen from when the consequences are probably death? You take your loot and you go. You don't keep trying. Why does Blitz insult Stolas so much if they were childhood friends? Because Blitzo insults everybody, except Luna. Like, if you're not his literal adopted daughter, meaning he wanted you, for some reason or another, he insults you. That's just who Blitzo is. And when it comes to insulting Stolas, he doesn't even do it that much, and even if they were childhood friends, this doesn't change his personality, just because, he's friends, quotation marks, with the people that he stalks every day, which would be Moxie and Millie. That doesn't mean he's not going to insult them. He does that constantly. So let's proceed.
To be Stolas' friend on his birthday. Blitzo is instructed to steal from the family while he has the opportunity. Right off the bat, bad circumstances. Stolas blushes and is excited at having a new friend, but Blitzo is awkward about the situation.
As you would be. You're literally being sold by your own father. You know that it's only temporary? And who's to say whether or not this was meant to be a temporary exchange? It may be the intentional vagueness of both parties, because one wanted one and the other wanted the other. We don't really know, but it's not relevant, and that's why the artist didn't bother to actually depict that in. What ended up happening is he stole from them and ran away anyway, so even if the idea was to stay forever, he ran away. And they're not going to spend resources and time to go hunt down another imp. They don't care. And obviously, Stolas wouldn't care to have him back either if he ran away, because Stolas is that kind of kid / guy, from what we can tell, and that he cares more about others', feelings and happiness, and so he wouldn't, he's not a selfish being, from what we can tell. So anyway, let's continue.
Stolas then tries to show Blitzo his book collection that he loves dearly.
Again, more, desperately trying to be a people pleaser and, be a good host, despite being the theoretical owner / friend of this person here.
But Blitzo claims Stolas' interests are boring and tells Stolas over. Later, Blitz tells Stolas they should play a game of pirates instead. The two then go around stealing from the Goetia family home while laughing. Blitzo then tosses all the treasures out the window to his father while Stolas calls him over. Later, Blitzo then climbs a tree while Stolas reads, and they talk about their futures and how Blitzo would hire Stolas if Stolas ever applied to his business in the future. The two laugh. Stolas is never seen being reprimanded, nor seems to recognize that Blitzo stole things from the...
Because it's not necessary to the story. Your mind fills in those gaps. Your mind naturally thinks about this, and then makes an assumption for itself. And the writers knew that it would do that, that's why they wrote it this way, and they were comfortable with letting you come to whatever conclusion you came to. So that could be, they're so wealthy and the place is so huge they didn't even notice. Or, Stolas was barely reprimanded, or it was never found out that it was, Stolas' fault at all, or whatever, or Stolas lied. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to the continuation of the story in the now, because this happened so far in the past. It's not relative to their relationship, really. We can assume that he probably got in trouble. And because he's still here, and he never brings it up, and never shows, like, because, you know, they're very clear about the emotions of these characters, never shows any, like, bad thoughts towards this childhood meeting, that it wasn't anything severe in terms of punishment, if that occurred. There's a lot of cues and tells that make it obvious that whatever happened at the end of this day didn't fucking matter, and that's why they didn't tell you.
Goetia House. Not sure if this was forgotten about or what, but their meeting in chemistry was forced. The only thing
Yes, that's literally the point, and that's what's setting up the dynamic. It is literally forced. Stolas has a very natural and non-forced attraction to another kid. His aristocrat father fucking purchases the other kid to be his friend. Then they're forced in a room together, Stolas does his best to be a good friend, and Blitzo decides to do what his father intended, which was to steal. Then, along the way, they realize they enjoy each other's company and have some fun, and talk to each other about their dreams, and develop an okay relationship, despite it being an initial forced interaction. Their relationship right now is not a forced relationship, it's just two kids having fun, and that's normal.
Blitzo took interest in of Stolas' was the book to the human realm. We jumped to 25 years later, where Stolas is attending a party his wife is throwing and has to listen as she insults and embarrasses him in front of other Goetia family members.
Yeah, mad fucked up. This bitch can die.
He gets drunk, and suddenly it's brought to his attention that Blitzo snuck into the palace. Stolas blushes and says, I will deal with him accordingly. Now this is where we...
And before we go on, this is clearly some guy who remembers he was attracted to this one other person in his life and had a great time with them when he was a kid and is very excited to meet with them and, you know, reconnect and, you know, etc., you know, just redevelop, you know, some kind of connection with them or company, or even just know more about them, like, post when they first met. You know, it's just, when you meet somebody you haven't seen for a long time, you're excited to talk with them, generally, if you liked their company in the past. So, that's the initial reason he gets here.
We have...
Oh, and then he makes a joke about him ravishing him because he's breaking into his literal bedroom, right? That's the joke. And perhaps a flirt, because he probably does feel very attracted to the only other person he's potentially ever felt attracted to in his life.
The most uncomfortable, flaky scene in the episode. Stolas...
It's literally meant to be uncomfortable. I don't know why you don't get this.
Brings Blitzo into his room saying, you came here to ravish me. Blitzo is confused, but then tries to play along to...
Yes, because he knows if he can distract him by making him flustered, he can more effectively steal from him.
Steal the book? Stolas then has them sit down and talk like they're old friends.
Once again, he's genuinely just trying to reconnect with this person and perhaps start on a long journey towards developing a relationship with them because he's still attracted to him.
Friends? Which changes the tone of the scene immediately.
Yes, because it's like a real-life interaction. You know, tones aren't meant to stay in one place. They will shift repeatedly over the course of an interaction between people.
But he mentions they hadn't even seen each other since his birthday over 25 years ago. So...
Yes, but they're also demons. He's also like a super high-level demon who clearly has a vast amount of memory and recollection ability. That's like his thing. If you look at who Stolas is based off of in the actual like demon mythology, his whole thing is he knows basically everything because he studied literally everything about like the human realm. And so yeah, like he's going to remember very vividly one of the best moments in his childhood life, if potentially not his whole life, besides maybe the birth of his daughter.
Well, Blitzo never came back to see him. They don't even know each other anymore. Stolas...
No, he knows him about as much as he knew him as a kid. He's just interested in talking with him because he wants to, once again, probably reestablish a good friendship with the only person he's ever been friends with.
Becomes nervous when he finds out that Blitzo is a serial killer, but then Blitzo
Yeah, you're aristocracy. You haven't done anything in your life. You're literally a sheltered, basically the equivalent of a sheltered child when it comes to violence, etc. He hears that and he's like, oh, fuck. I haven't seen this guy in 25 years. What if he's turned into a serial killer? And what if I'm in danger right now? What if I made a mistake by bringing him to my room?
Comes on to him. Stolas suddenly...
Then he's immediately, slightly reassured, but more put at surprise, because he's now being hit on in a devilish way by, the person he's genuinely attracted to, but is almost certainly not ready for this kind of interaction with, just because of the scenario.
He backs away despite him.
Because he's very much not ready.
A minute ago accusing Blitzo of coming in to ravish him?
Which was a joke and a flirtation, like a flirt, not like, oh, I'm ready to fuck you right now. It's, people do this. Again, I feel like you just haven't enough life experience. People will make blatant jokes that sound wildly inappropriate, but because it's a joke and because it's intentionally wildly inappropriate for shock value, that's the whole point. And if you use it in a certain way, it can be a flirt, which is exactly what he was doing, both making a joke with, leaning on the side of flirting to show that he is interested in Blitzo at least a little bit, or, potentially is interested, and that's kind of what,
It wasn't clear that was a joke, because Stolas is drunk and is known to have a crush on Blitzo, so what's with the change of heart?
There's no change of heart. He has a crush on him. That doesn't mean he's ready to instantly fuck this guy that he only met as a child 25 years ago.
If Blitzo was truly there to murder him, he would have done so already. Blitzo continues to pursue him while Stolas nervously backs away.
Yes, because he's certainly not ready for this level of intimacy. How is this hard to get?
So shoves him up.
Like, do you forget that he's only ever been with his forced-upon-him wife? Like, I doubt he's had any good sexual experiences, and he's certainly not ever dated anyone. He was literally forcibly married as early as possible.
I'm up against the bookcase, and Stolas says, "What are you doing? I barely remember your name. 3 minutes ago."
Yeah, that's an expression. As in, I barely remember your name. As in, it's been forever. We don't interact. You're coming on very strong. That doesn't mean I literally barely remember it. This guy remembers everything. It's an expression. It's not meant to be taken literally.
He just said,
It's been a long time, but I have a very good memory.
So
that's
which
the
is
truth.
it? Blitzo then says his name is Blitz.
It's the truth. He does remember. I barely remember your name is an expression to say, hey, we don't really know each other that well.
And Stolas is like, wait, didn't it end in an O? I remember. So
how are you still hung up on this?
This dialogue is so back and forth. What is happening? Make up your mind already. Blitzo then pushes him against the bed. Reminder, he's only doing all this to grab the book and leave. And Stolas asks what Blitzo is doing to him, and Blitzo's like, oh, what do you want me to do to you? And Stolas stammers, distracted by his missing book, but then Blitzo bites his neck? And suddenly, out of nowhere, Stolas becomes... Yeah. Let me say, the romantic music does not help.
So what you, I guess, failed to grasp is Stolas becomes ecstatic with pleasure because he's never experienced pleasure from someone he was genuinely interested in and, probably of the correct gender. We don't know for sure if he's bisexual or straight. He's probably bi to a degree. Or he was just fantasizing while creating, I think her name's... I forget her name. The child. So yeah, he's probably gay. And so this is probably one of the first genuine sexual experiences he's ever had in his entire repressed life. And you can tell later that he's, a relatively high libido individual when he's actually having his, needs met, when he's actually being given what he needs from a sexual interaction. So, for the first time ever, someone that he's into does something very forward to someone who is of a timid nature, and I guess, as we can see later, maybe formed by this interaction, enjoys being dominated. you know, this is all new to him, right? He hasn't ever had a legitimate sexual interaction with anybody, probably, is what the writers have been depicting. And so when this happens, it takes him off guard, it surprises him, it makes him feel immense pleasure, and feel something new that he's, like, probably never enjoyed before. And they're demons, and he has really high, probably levels of, like, life force and energy, etc., because he's a special demon, whatever. So things are probably hitting him really hard.
Help here?
Oh, so you like to command, you like being in charge.
This is him referencing his knowledge of the human world. Probably the only thing that he's basing any of his sexual interactions, like, on. You know, he probably is just referencing all of the things he's read and is doing his best to play the proper role for the one guy he's ever had any interest in, since he's willing to go ahead with what he's now had forced upon him.
Yeah, I sure do.
This is so unfitting. This is not what is happening. Nothing about this situation is romantic.
No shit. No shit. It exists only because someone's trying to steal from the other. It's not romantic. It never would be romantic. That's the point. It's meant to be awkward. It's meant to make you feel, oh god, what is happening? Because one person doesn't know they're being stolen from, and that this person is acting entirely illegitimately because they're blinded by the situation, blinded by their inexperience, and blinded by their own desire at one point. And the other is so desperately trying to put on an act while multitasking the ability to steal from them. You know, they're literally forcing themselves to go through a sexual interaction that they, at that moment, did not desire at all, which is a horrible experience, you know, having to force yourself to do that, and is also trying to steal from him, which feels even worse when you realize how much this guy's into you. You need to look at this from both perspectives. Yes, of course it feels wrong. It is wrong. That's what they're depicting. And you say this place is in hell, why aren't things more hellish? Here's a great example.
This is extremely awkward, and I've never been more uncomfortable in my life.
Good, the writers did their job.
Romance. Stolas is completely misreading the situation. We jump into this way too quickly. He immediately starts talking dirty and being weird when he has...
And if you're just making these statements as commentary on the video, that's fine, but this is meant to be, like, you know, like a deconstruction and a critique of this episode. And so the way you express this, it seems like you're critiquing those parts of this. If that's not the case, then, you know, ignore my comments. You know, it's, yeah, expressing that is fine. But if that's a legitimate critique of the atmosphere and, you know, the way this was written, then, yeah, no shit, that's the way things are. That's on purpose.
Hasn't seen Blitzo in over 25 years. For him to go from boring in bed to immediately talking dirty and being horny is out of character.
No, it's not out of character. Like, how... he literally was forced to marry this woman. Forced to reproduce with her and bear a child. How do you think the sex is going to be? Especially if he's gay. No shit, he was boring in bed to someone he didn't like, who treated him like shit, who, you know, etc., etc., etc. Like, this is not a retcon, this is not a contradiction to his character, this makes all of the sense. Like, let's proceed.
At least so fresh into his fling with Blitzo at this point. Blitzo then ties him up, and he only starts getting weirder, and then he says, it means so much that the one who wants me is my first to have a friend. I'm like, that's a statement that could have not come out of your mouth.
Yeah, it's a little weird. And it's awkward and very sad, and that's kind of the point. Stolas is a sad character. He's completely, you know, he's been kept inside his entire life. Like, that's all he's ever known, you know? He's going to say weird things. I don't know if you've ever met a socially awkward individual, which Stolas clearly is, especially when he doesn't know the situation or hasn't experienced it much. that's just what he's gonna do. And yeah, it's even more awkward when it's in a sexual interaction. Let's proceed.
That was weird. Not something anyone should say to some guy they hung out with as a child over 25 years ago.
Agreed, but you can tell he's grasping at straws and doing his best in his first attempt that was sprung and forced upon him, that he's actually interested in doing well.
Stolas and Blitzo do, and Blitzo makes a getaway in the morning while Stella screams at Stolas, asking what the heck is going on. Stolas excitedly proclaims this marks his first action towards divorcing Stella. This is a retcon. Originally, in episode 2 of the series.
It's very much not a retcon. Let's proceed.
Stella was yelling at Stolas over sleeping with Blitzo. Notice how Stolas is trying to appease her.
Notice how they're still in a house together. They may not always live in the same house, but at certain points they are in a house together. The expectation is that he would at least reserve times of fucking his lover in their marital home for times that she's not there, and it's later told that she's there a little bit too often. I think whenever the daughter's visiting or when she's bringing the daughter, whatever. So, yeah, she, in a sense, despite being a horrible bitch, she's justifiably upset because her daughter's there, and I'm pretty sure it's stated that she's not always there, and she's there. So the fact that he fucked Stolas either the night before they arrived or the night that they were there, you know, it's just, anybody would be upset about that. It's like, don't bring your gay partner that you ended our relationship with, you know, in such a, you know, drastic display over when, you know, I'm here with my daughter for, you know, the few occasions during the week that I am. You can do that literally any other time. That's why she's pissed off. That's why she's mad at him for doing it. Or just in general, like, you know, anytime that she knows that he's done it, she's going to be mad about it. But in this situation, it's especially because of the scenario that's going on.
Claiming what happened with Blitzo was not expected and he didn't meet.
Yeah, exactly. He would have done it on a different day. He didn't have time to go to a motel, and it was probably another one of those, I'm desperately trying to, you know, have a nice sexual interaction with Blitzo, so I'm gonna take it every chance I get, and that is expressed many times. And it literally quoted from Blitzo saying that, you know, don't pretend that, you know, I'm not literally quoting, sorry, but yeah, it's quoted, don't pretend that this isn't you just trying to fuck me every chance you get, is what he basically says.
Meanwhile, this episode claims no, he knew what he was doing the entire time and was happy to do it.
He's still a timid and shameful person. This was his moment of, you know, sticking up for himself for the first time ever, and actually, you know, claiming something for himself and doing what he wants, you know, and actually going in the face of this person who's been probably basically mentally torturing him, if not literally, for a decade, if not more. So, yeah, like, this moment is very brazen and brash, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't legitimate here and he isn't legitimate later. He's just being caught, you know, post all of this while still in the throes of divorcing this woman and, you know, trying to raise his daughter, trying to stay close to her enough to stay with his daughter who he loves desperately. Like, I feel like you don't have enough life experience for these moments to grasp that there's so much nuance and dynamic to this that, yes, both are true. It is both true that he was brazen then and he is timid now. He is in the state of trying to keep things as okay as he can while his daughter grows up until, you know, she's her own adult and can live on her own and he can just visit her or whatever. He's trying to keep things as okay as he can until the divorce can be finalized or until he doesn't have to see this woman anymore, etc. You know, because it's his daughter. He cares about her, so he's trying to make things as good as he can, especially for her sake. So being caught with his gay lover the next day while they're around is really shitty. And so, yeah, he feels at fault, as most people would. You know, even if it even if you don't give a shit about the wife's opinion, which you really shouldn't, his daughter's there, right? So
rubbing it in Stella's face. At the end of the episode, Stolas asks Stella why she's still hanging around, and she says,
I like tormenting you.
Yeah, so it's even worse. Like, she's literally here because she likes torturing him, as usual. So, yeah, I guess, you know, he's unfortunately encroaching on the time that she's tormenting him.
I want to keep reminding you of what you did.
I will come back to this. So yeah, this is a problem. Initially, Helluva Boss was about two guys that didn't know each other.
That was our viewer's perspective, and that's why this is so good, because it shows that not everything is as it seems, and there's so much more depth to a person than what your initial understanding is. And they took something that was so boring and generic, and they turned it on its head and said, look, this boring generic expectation you have is just the crust of an incredibly deep pie that of just backstory, passion, sorrow, etc.
It was completely fine. That Stolas was just...
It was fine, yeah. It was interesting, it was fun. It wasn't nearly as good as this. Like, you don't understand, like, that was just, like, gag day humor good stuff. This is like, oh my god, legitimately good, like, reality-based storytelling.
Some closeted, kinky rich guy that has a failing marriage, but just didn't realize he could have a different happiness or pursuit of other things until he met a random imp named Blitzo who duped him for his book. And Stolas is like, well, he was still better to spend the night with than my wife, so I'm gonna rope him into an exchange of passion for my book. Since he used me first, I'll use him in the same way. They were mutually being assholes.
Is what we thought, and it was a fine thing to think. It was good for an okay story. This is so much better, and we'll get to why in a moment.
I like that. Meanwhile, Blitzo's entire business relies on his relationship with Stolas, and Stolas' transgressions are causing major drama for the Goetia family. Not to mention he's breaking the law, what with lending his grimoire to Blitzo, which puts a target on his back, and their daughters feel betrayed because they're both selfish people in their own right.
I'm not sure how you meant that. His daughter felt betrayed, and maybe still does, Stolas's, for sure. With Luna, I don't think she really gives a shit what Blitzo does with Stolas. It doesn't really seem to matter to her. She just wants to live her life, you know, be a developing teenager and have good times, and unfortunately, you know, she's adopted by Blitzo, and he provides for her, but not in a great way, clearly. Blitzo's psychotic and, you know, doesn't run a very good business and doesn't keep money well and has her working for him, etc. You know, she has a lot of reasons to dislike her dad, right? It's not necessarily because he fucks Stolas. I don't think she even cares, really. There's never been, like, a thing. It's like, I can't believe, you know, she's, you know, you're wasting time on this owl. Like, she doesn't care. The other daughter, on the other hand, obviously does, because, you know, he allowed his perversion, desire for love, and weakness to the manipulation of Blitz to encroach on, you know, maybe not in the moment it wasn't weakness to manipulation, but overall weakness to manipulation of Blitz, to encroach on his time with her, that he intentionally took out of his day to spend with her. And it's like, how much do you really love me if you're willing to, you know, taint our time and possibly even use it as an excuse to hang out with your gay lover? And that would hurt anybody.
So they're both in deep shit, but somewhere along the line, they start conversing and catching feelings for each other, which then brings up the fears of starting a new relationship, especially a forbidden one. Not to mention...
No, they're not thinking they're developing a new relationship. Blitzo is only ever thinking, it's kind of weird that I kind of like this guy, it's kind of scary that I kind of like this guy, especially because of how fucked up things are, and I should probably never go into that because of my past relationships, and because I'm a fucked up person, and I'm an imp, and I'm lesser than him, and blah blah blah. And, additionally, he's a creepy, selfish asshole who only wants me for my body because that's all he's ever cared about post-childhood. And the reason that he thinks that is because he forced a scenario that told Stolas that this is what Blitzo wants. This is what Blitz desires from me, is for me to be a depraved, cock-hungry slut for him, basically. And as long as I keep lending him the book, I'll keep getting to spend time with him and have what is admittedly an amazing sexual experience. But it wasn't his idea to be this way. He's just trying to play the role that he thinks Blitz wanted because of the initial interaction in his bedroom, which causes this horrible miscommunication, which makes this amazing story. Let's proceed.
Mention all they've suffered from previous relationships, which gives them both an insane amount of baggage that they'd have to accept from each other.
Yes, this is all true. They would have to spend probably a couple years fucking hammering it all out and talking about it and being good partners to each other if they wanted to do that. Blitz doesn't know if he wants to do that. Stolas wants it, but isn't sure how to do it, and isn't sure what he's doing wrong because of initial misconception.
And when it's brought up that they're just in a fuck-buddy relationship, when they both secretly crave more, they both feel guilty for starting this in such a poorly thought-out way and have to deal with the fallout of their actions. This was already so deep. There were layers. Now everything has been condensed into Stolas is an innocent little boy that was forced to marry an awful bad bitch and only wants love from Blitzo. And I'm like, no! People watch this show because this is hell. Because they're awful people.
You know what's not that bad when you're watching it? Oh look, some shitty individuals who are using each other. You know what's soul-crushing, horribly depressing, and just frustrating? Watching two people who have legitimate feelings for each other never get to be close to one another because one thinks the other is using them, and one knows the other is using them in their heart, and it's all based on a horrible miscommunication from the start. Despite them both wanting a very genuine, wholesome relationship, well, one being willing to potentially have one, and then the other one wanting it, and genuinely enjoying each other's company because they actually like each other on a certain level, it'll never happen because of a miscommunication between them, and because it's a cyclical process. I lend Blitzo the book so that I can get that scarce amount of time with him. Blitzo then gets the book and sees that any time they're spending is a transaction, and that he is almost being forced to have a, quotation marks, good time, which is potentially an actual good time to him, with Stolas. But it's tainting the experience, because it's a transaction, because it's the only way he can get the book, he thinks. Because Stolas wouldn't just lend it to him, but maybe he would if they were in an actual relationship, right? But that's not going to develop, and we don't even know if Blitzo is the kind of person who would want to develop an actual relationship with him. Then again, he has been with Veroxica in the past, so possibly, but, you know, he does enjoy his company. And he doesn't even let that on to Stolas. He just makes it seem like he's only fucking him for the book, and that's how he feels. And Stolas feels horrible, but can't help himself for wanting more time with the only person that he's ever been close to, besides his own daughter, which is a completely different dynamic, obviously.
We liked the...
Oh yeah, going back to it, that is way more hellish than, haha, we're both skis bags, we're both using each other, it's terrible, isn't it? That's whatever, you know, nobody's getting hurt here. You know what's hell? Wanting someone, wanting companionship, as we see with Blitzo as he lays in his bed at night and cries because he's missing his family. wanting someone to be close to, having them at arm's length, and not knowing you're the one holding you two apart. And never getting companionship because of it. Soul-crushing aloneness. That's way more hellish than the simple dynamic that we were initially portrayed and not retconned away from, but elaborated upon.
The drama seeing the consequences to their actions. Stolas is now one-dimensional. And Stella...
You cannot be so wrong in one video. It's literally the opposite. He's one-dimensional because you're only seeing the only one dimension that you dislike, which is, oh, he's a soft guy. Yeah, that is one part of his character. The other part is literally everything else I just fucking described.
Well, it is as well. I don't know what she...
Yeah, she's one-dimensional. But I think that's a writing plot, like that's on purpose, and that's, again, it was on purpose when we first started watching the show that they seemed one-dimensional. She may have a lot to her. I mean, she was raised in aristocracy, and she's in hell, hellish aristocracy, so she's probably the way she is too because of her aristocratic, sheltered upbringing, where she was probably beaten the shit out of if she didn't, you know, do everything the right way, right? So... yeah, like, there could be backstory there, too, that explains who she is. It doesn't really, you know, forgive her for how she is, but we could definitely probably empathize more if we were shown that. But no, she's extremely one-dimensional. That's on purpose, because effectively, to the story, which is about Blitz, which is about Stolas, which is about Blitz's, you know, employees, she doesn't really matter. She's not the focus of the story, so we're not going to go into why she is the way she is. She's here... and the way she is important because it's how Stolas is developed as a character.
She loses or gains from the divorce, but Stella, or whatever character she might have had, has just been thrown out the window. Initially, it was believed that Stolas had married Stella and had Octavia. It was hinted that their relationship was decent when Octavia was born, shown in the...
No. They're aristocrats. They'll pose for a photo. He'll be happy to have had a good time with his daughter, and that's why he's like that in that photo. But let's proceed to why you think that.
The picture of them hanging out together, shown by Stolas' initial passive and guilty nature of his fling with Blitzo.
Because he feels bad for hurting his daughter. Obviously. How do you not get any of this? Like... yes, he's shameful. He's been raised to believe that it's shameful to do. He's doing something that is generally conceived as shameful, and his daughter knows about it. Yes, he's going to feel ashamed. Not only that, he knows he's hurting his daughter because she tells him, and she's being standoffish and is upset about it and talks about it. That's why he feels ashamed. No one matters more to him than his daughter.
Along with him singing about how he thought love would be fun, and Octavia claiming, I used to love to come to Lululand when I was a kid and my parents didn't hate each other.
Yeah, that's probably just a teenage brain trying to think of a way to work in, hey, I hate that you guys hate each other, rather than being an actual admission of loving Lululand. Because if you think about, like, you're trying to quote these episodes, she literally says she never loved it, and we really only went because you liked it. And you only really liked it, if we think back about it, because this is where you met Blitz, right? So, no, like, that's not a point.
But now it has been retconned where Stella was an awful bitch from day one.
I mean, she seems that way.
Marriage was arranged, and Octavia wasn't actually wanted by either of them. She was just made as the heir to the throne. Stella is constantly talking about how pathetic Stolas is, how much she hates him and wants to be rid of him. It seems like she's only angry he cheated on her because he embarrassed her in front of her friends.
Which is almost certainly the case when you're an aristocrat and your image is everything. That's going to matter to you way more than your partner's actual love, when, as you can see, your life is on the fucking line if you don't do the right things in an aristocratic lineage.
And she only hired a hitman to kill him simply because she was petty. That is a huge...
Not just because she's petty, but because it would clear up so many things for her. She would no longer be considered disgraced if he was killed, because she would be separated from him. in a way that doesn't involve an actual divorce, which she's probably prolonging as long as she fucking can, because it looks bad to be divorced. If you're widowed, it's a lot better.
Huge disappointment. I was hoping that deep down, or originally, she did care about Stolas and her daughter. But then as time went on, her narcissistic behavior got worse, and Stolas...
This is just you saying you hoped she was this way, despite not ever being depicted that way. Literally every scenario we see with her and her daughter in the room, I don't even know if I've ever seen her speak to her daughter. It's to that degree. And I just watched these episodes. She clearly doesn't care very much about her daughter, and clearly is an aristocrat through and through, and had her daughter for the same reason Stolas did, because they were told to.
Fell out of love with her. So when he cheats on her, it comes as a shock, which validates her anger. And when she gets involved with calling a hitman out to kill him out of betrayal, I was extremely intrigued that she would be more involved in this. That there are consequences to hurting Stella's feelings. But Stolas claims in this episode he didn't hurt her feelings at all because she had no feelings for him. She's just a one-dimensional evil bitch that wants to make Stolas' life miserable.
Appearingly one-dimensional, and probably intentionally. Again, you don't need to go into the backstory and depth of every character if they're filling their role in the plot correctly. And she is. I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of reasons she is the way she is. That doesn't mean she's, like, necessarily one-dimensional. She just appears that way for the sake of writing. Like, I don't... Whatever, let's just move on.
Well, for no reason. This was a huge step back for Helluva Boss. 90% of this...
Quite the contrary, it's their giant, like, greatest leap forward in terms of writing. There is so much nuance to all of this, and it is so much better than what it appeared to be. And that's the best part, is they took something simple, and they contrived it and manipulated it into something, and like, built upon the simplicity behind the scenes, taking certain cues from here and there, to and you know, seeing the logic lines of what is technically possible, what is technically impossible, and what would be, you know, not sticking true to previous established lore. And they made an amazing backstory, an amazing, like, development within the minds of the viewer of these characters. I didn't give a shit about Blitzo until, like, a few episodes in. A few episodes from, like, last few episodes, I should say. I didn't give a shit about Stolas. I just thought he was, like, off, you know, funny, aristocrat, slut man wants to fuck Blitzo. That's fun. Funny joke. Whatever. This? Oh my god, I almost cried. This and the episode where he takes Octavia, now that I remember it, to the theme park. Or the episode where, you know, you see him, lulling her to sleep at night. Those were really good moments. The actual human, you know, loving interactions, or the actual human sorrowful, fearful, etc. interactions, that's good story writing. Before, it was just gag-a-day humor, which was kind of fun, lighthearted. This is legitimately good, heartstring-tugging writing.
This episode was unnecessary. Writers, give me an SOS. Is Viv holding you hostage? Give me a sign. Anyway, this could have been easily fixed. So first off, take the last section of this episode and clip it onto the season 1 finale. We don't need 2 episodes ending the same way in a row. We don't need a depressing follow.
Yeah, you're kind of right on that. Like, we didn't need to have the same thing established twice, especially in a row. They could have handled that a little differently.
Follow up to Stolas one episode later, before counting part 2 of the season 1 finale that is yet to release. We don't need that. You can keep the backstory episode, but delete Stolas and Blitzo ever meeting as children. Focus on Blitzo's circus life with Fizz, his father, and maybe even his mother.
Oh, I get it. You just, like, really don't like any, like, actual dynamic or nuanced, like, relationships, huh?
Her sister, Stolas, as a child, could meet young Stella and show how they might have gotten along, or fell in love, despite being engaged. And then showcase how over time their love fell out. This could have been...
Why are you, like, you're the one who first points out tropes, and now you're just trying to give the most generic story I've ever heard. People fall in love, fall out of love. Yeah, that literally happens a billion times a day. Like, why do you want that to be the backstory? No, that's shit. You know what's way more interesting? A forced marriage between aristocrats from someone who's really aristocratic and someone who dislikes being an aristocrat. And then fucking being forced to have a kid, and then forced to put on a show as if they actually like each other, doing their best to like each other, because they're literally their only option for each other, and is probably what's actually going on. Realizing they can't, one of them, like, completely giving up on the idea and treating the other like shit every fucking day, and the other one tolerating it for the sake of the daughter they legitimately love. That's way more fucking interesting.
Done with Fizz and Blitzo too. I know, there's a much needed big episode of backstory we need between these two. They both have major scar tissue and...
Very much agree, and I'm almost certain we're gonna have that delved into in the next few episodes. Like, they can't not do this at this point. I don't know if we're gonna get an episode back, like, flashback. They probably will, given that they've been doing that. It would be cool. They may just go over it in dialogue between the two. Kind of like they've been kind of touching on, like when you first met the metal circus clown and stuff. They may just continue doing that. Who knows? I think that their relationship is also very interesting. I'd like to see what happens.
Fizz is missing both his arms and legs for Pete's sake. This was even foreshadowed potentially by their balloon play of...
I did not even realize that. You might be right. That might be foreshadowing. It might have just been a way of detailing a joke. I don't know, but cool little side-by-side there. Good juxtaposition.
One of the horses missing its arms and legs. There was a story there, alright. But if you don't want to spoil that too early in Season 2, then fine. But you could have come up with anything between these two to pass the time. They could have still even stolen from the Goetias. Stolas and Blitzo could have bumped into each other and had a nice moment before going their separate ways. And perhaps neither of them remember each other from that moment 25 years ago. That would have been fine. Now, I mentioned some foreshadowing in this episode. But there's a little more we have to discuss. Stolas mentions his grimoire can teach him how to predict prophecies, but this doesn't seem to have gone anywhere within the 25 years since he mentioned that.
That's just lore. That's just lore. Like, I don't think they're ever going to touch on that. Like, I think they're just, like, trying to really slam home the idea that he is just the Stolas from demonic mythology. I don't think it's, like, actually for the sake of story writing. They may reference it later, be like, oh, I prophesized this one time, you know? Like, you know, they might use it for something like that, but I doubt it. I don't think it's actually important to the story, because the story's very heavily focused on the relationships of the characters, rather than, you know, the events of actual hell, obviously. It's literally just been about Blitzo's business this entire time.
Don't know if that's going to come up again, but it was worth mentioning. And Stolas also has a book on Asmodean crystals. From what I heard, these crystals are actually used by succubus to travel to the living world on their own.
Yes, actually, and so the theory is that he's trying to make one to give to Blitz, which is so fucking clever, because then it would completely remove them from that transactional method of interacting with one another. This way, if Blitz ever spends time with Stolas, it's because he wants to and isn't being held at gunpoint, you know, I'll give you the book if you do this, you know? It'll be because he actually wanted to spend time with Stolas, and that would allow for an actual relationship to develop, if it can.
So either A, Stolas plans to give one of these to Blitzo to end their relationship, or B, Stolas plans to give one of these to Blitz as a test to see if their relationship is more than just business if Blitz doesn't have to rely on him anymore. Or C, there were some spoilers recently that Octavia might...
I think it's more like what I described. He wants to develop an actual relationship with Blitz, and he knows he can't do that while he's continuing to use the book as a means to spend time with him. So if he removes that, and it's entirely on Blitz whether or not he actually spends time with him, then there's the actual potential of developing a real relationship. Whereas right now, it's a extremely wealthy aristocrat having a pauper do his body for the sake of payment, which is use of a divine artifact.
Steal the grimoire for whatever reason, and Blitz goes to Stolas, who just happens to have these crystals, and he joins Blitz in the living world to track down his daughter, maybe? I'm unsure. The circumstances around this future episode are not well known, and the heart wounds are so fresh after everything that has happened, this route seems a little bit confusing. But there was also foreshadowing that Blitzo would hire Stolas for his serial killing business, so not sure how or when that's gonna happen.
may or may not happen. It might have just been, you know, an example of what kids say when they're aspiring for the future. And it was also more of a way to show that he legitimately liked Stolas at this point, to the point that he was like, I'll hire you as I want to spend more time with you in the future. That's more like what I think the purpose of that statement was. I don't think he's actually going to work for him unless he gets completely kicked out of aristocracy and thus has to join the crew. That might be it. I just really doubt it.
Or if this episode will allude to that. It's possible not a ton will change about the series, just from this episode revealing that Stolas and Blitzo are estranged childhood friends, but they're also not really childhood friends, but
as much as you can be after spending one day with one another. And love at first sight, it's not even a real thing. Like, he didn't actually fall in love with him, he just was attracted to him, and probably the first and only time he'd ever been attracted to somebody. So it was, you know, impressive for, like, not impressive, but, you know, it impressed upon him. You know, like, oh man, I'm really interested in this kid. I would love to spend time with this kid, get to know them, hang out with them, maybe act on these feelings that I'm feeling, you know? He's a kid.
But yeah, what's done is done. I doubt they're gonna retcon this back, and I'm still excited for future episodes, but this was a mistake they should not have made. Helluva Boss has set up so much stuff. We are building up to a big season or finale, and I am concerned they may be in over their heads and might not be able to deliver because we have so much going on. Stolas and
That's very true, and I'm actually very interested in to see all the the different things you're going to reference here. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how much they've actually just been putting into work behind the scenes. It's like, okay, we got the robot clown, we got the Viper, we got the, you know, I'll just let you do it because I'm probably just going to agree with whatever you're saying here.
Blitzo are in a scandalous relationship that is illegal due to the Grimoire being involved. Blitzo and Stolas file.
Not only that, but potentially illegal just due to aristocracy and him being an imp. Like, you know, some things that aren't even allowed in the palace, I'm pretty sure, as workers, right? They're that low level.
Relating this to secrecy by exposing themselves to a human.
I forgot about this. Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
Government with recorded evidence. Blitzo made enemies with ex-cherubs from heaven. Stolas and Bear.
Yeah, they're still out there. Forgot about that.
Embarrassing the Goetia family, which has led to Stella hiring a hitman to kill him. Not to mention Blitzo's exes, partners getting involved.
I don't think Vraska's not going to be that, very involved later. She's already kind of had her episode. And she just showed up for the sake of, probably adding to the musical, really. That's probably the whole point.
Just a lot they need to deliver for the main characters on top of our side characters' development. It's a lot, and I just hope they're not going beyond what they can handle. Everyone is praising this episode.
Yeah, that's a lot. But with the tactful and amazing nature that they handled this episode, it gives me hope that they'll be able to make true on all of those setups that were intentionally painted for the audience. I do believe that they are of the caliber now that they could. Well, whether they will, I don't know, but here's hoping, right?
For being awesome and perfect and adorable, and I'm just like, it's not. But I digress. I have a lot more to say about Helluva Boss and Has-Been Hotel. And Has-Been Hotel hasn't even started. Oh boy.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're just giving up on it at this point. It's been fucking a year or two? It feels like Helluva Boss took off way more than Has-Been. People like Helluva Boss more than Has-Been for the most part, as far as I can tell. And they've definitely developed it a lot more now, so there's that sunk cost fallacy as well as the established, presence that it already has, so everything you put into it is now just going to be exponential. So I honestly feel like Has-Been could be given up on at this point. So many resources have to be going into Helluva.
But I'll save that for another video. I adore Stolas' song, by the way. I'm gonna listen to that on repeat for the next week or two till I lose my mind. Anyway.
Yeah, Stolas' music is amazing. So, yeah, that concludes the reply. Sorry if I was a little harsh on you, but it had to be said. These takes were really odd and a little simplistic and rudimentary even. Like, I feel like he didn't look into the depth of these characters' emotions. He didn't apply a lot of empathy to them. And maybe forgot some things. Like, that's maybe why you were thinking, like, oh, they retconned it. No, like, all of this is well within the realms of established canon. Like, there's nothing that goes against the canon. If you're saying that they retconned our perspective of Stolas and Blitzo's relationship, you're entirely right. They did change it completely. But that's an amazing writing ploy. Like, that's something that's hard to do. And do well, the way they have. To take something that was true, and still remains to be true, while also being so much less important than everything in the background that makes it true. Yeah, it's true that Stolas is an aristocrat who loans a book to Blitzo so that he'll fuck him. What's way more interesting is that he's doing it because he doesn't just want sex from Blitzo, he legitimately likes him. And Blitzo is a convoluted, torn-up person who genuinely wants affection from somebody. And because of this transaction, and because of how he thinks about himself, and how he thinks about Stolas, because of everything that was mistakenly established, cannot develop that affectionate relationship with him. That is so fucking interesting. You know, like, And on top of Stolas having to play that role, so that he's doing everything that he thinks Blitz likes. He thinks he's doing the right thing. It's so beautiful and interesting. And it's unfortunate that you didn't see that. Anyway, that's been the reply. Yeah, hope y'all enjoyed it. And hopefully this gives you a little bit more, I guess, not introspection, but, you know, a little bit more perspective on that episode. Watch it again, and, like, think about what I've been saying here. You'll see, it's really beautiful. Anyway, see ya.